Comments? No? Okay, I see a shaking head no. We don't need an executive session, and I think I saw Lori here, report from the TAC. Hi, Lori. Welcome.
Thank you. I have a very short update for you today. The only item that the TAC met on that's on your agenda is item number 8. Item number 8 is the discussion of approval of deferred projects. Our role in that discussion was to ensure that the process was fair and transparent. Staff gave us a presentation, answered questions, and there was consensus among the TAP board that that was a great process. We also were updated a little bit on your item number 9, which is your updated performance measures, but we won't be bringing back a recommendation on that until your next meeting. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so that concludes item number 4. We'll move on to item number 5, discuss and take appropriate action on the January 8th meeting minutes. Is there a motion? Councilmember Alter, and second by Councilmember Matea. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 6, discuss and take appropriate action on the 24-25 UPWP amendment number 2.
Good afternoon, Teresa Hernandez. Excuse me. Today we're proposing amendment number 2 to the fiscal year 2024 and 2025 UPWP. The UPWP, or the Unified Planning Work Program, is a federally required document, and it identifies the planning priorities and activities to be carried out within the CAMPO region. Today we're proposing to carry over $250,000 of unexpended fiscal year 2023 planning funds for moving and operation expenses. These funds were previously approved by the Policy Board on June 12th. We also received a request from Capital Metro to amend 2 of their planning studies, subtask 4.4.1 and 4.4.2. There was no monetary amendment. It's just to rename their studies and their descriptions of the studies. So staff is requesting that the Transportation Policy Board approve fiscal year 2024-2025 UPWP Amendment Number 2 and its accompanying resolution 2024-2-6.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on that.
Move approval.
Judge Oakley, second by Mayor Houston. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Item number 7, discuss and take appropriate action on CAMPO Executive Director to begin negotiations on the Rail Safety Action Plan.
Good afternoon, Will Liska. On October 30th, CAMPO issued a request for proposals for support services for a regional safety action plan. A $2.3 million grant from the United States Department of Transportation will fund this work, the purpose of which is to develop a regional roadway safety action plan for the 6-county CAMPO region, as well as 5 specific safety action plans for Bastrop, Burnett, Caldwell, Hayes, and Williamson counties. It should be noted that a safety action plan for Travis County is being supported through a separate effort led by Travis County, and coordination between our 2 efforts will occur. Upon completion, the safety action plan will provide sponsors with eligibility to pursue implementation grants through the Safe Streets for All federal discretionary program for projects, programs, and strategies contained within the action plan. CAMPO received 6 responses to the RFP. These proposals were ranked and scored by the evaluation committee using the criteria defined in the RFP. A short list of 3 firms was interviewed by the evaluation committee, and the top-ranked firm following those interviews, DKS Associates, has been selected as the preferred contract recipient. Next slide. With that, staff requests the Transportation Policy Board to authorize the CAMPO Executive Director to negotiate and execute a contract with a top-ranked consultant for the Regional Safety Action Plan.
All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion on this item.
So moved.
All right, motion by Councilmember Harper Madison, and I heard a second somewhere. Oakley, okay. Sorry. Okay, second by Judge Oakley. All right, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 9, discuss and take appropriate action on funding of deferred projects. Mr. Collins.
Okay. Thank you. So this item is bringing back the deferred project item that we had, information item last month. And because we're talking about a significant amount of money, I am going to take some time to kind of go through the process again. And so really want to talk about, we've finished up the project assessment and recommendation report, which is included in your packet. And as part of this presentation, we're going to focus on the refunding scenario and set aside scenarios that are outlined in the packet. We'll also talk about the financial forecast, which talks about our funding for the next 10 years, and then also the impact of the decisions that are made today. Included in that, there's also appendices A through E. I want to point that out just because it does have a history of the deferred project process going all the way back to 2020, and additional information on the process we use to evaluate the projects to develop this recommendation. And so the recommendation report, and I do want to point out, this process kicked off in July, so we've been working on this for the past 9 months. And I want to take the opportunity to thank the staff at City of Austin and Travis County. A couple of them I see over there who have been very, very helpful through this whole process, as well as TxDOT. This has been a collaborative process that's taken a lot of collaboration and a lot of information, a lot of meetings. It took a lot of everyone's time, so I think, and this is kind of the end result of that. So a couple of key things I want to point out is that project materials, we kicked it off in July. Project materials for the assessment were due on September 1st. We basically spent all of fall working with the sponsors and TxDOT to review the projects. And then after the policy board meeting on January 8th, or last month, we did further explore the set-aside information scenario, and so we requested set-aside information on January 10th, with that coming back with a due date of January 24th, and that's the information that was included for the set-aside scenario. And obviously, we have finally finished the funding recommendation report, and we're here today. Depending on the decisions, a couple of things I want to point out is the next steps essentially are we'll program whatever decisions are made by the policy board today in the transportation improvement program that's slated for adoption on May 13th. And I will be updating the recommendation report depending on the decisions made today because that is tied to the resolutions. The next 4 slides are really kind of a deep dive on the readiness of each project. I'm not going to go through the details, but they are here depending on the questions we have today in the discussion. But I do want to say that we're recommending 3 of the 4 projects. One of these is, the first one is Pierce Lane. This will upgrade a 2-lane roadway in the eastern part of Travis County to a 4-lane divided with sidewalks and bike lanes. And that's scheduled for fiscal year 2028. Then we have Lakeline Boulevard, which actually has a very similar scope of work where it's a 2-lane roadway that will go to a 4-lane roadway with bicycle facilities as well as sidewalks. That will be scheduled for fiscal year 2027. And then finally, this was an update. We didn't have enough information to make a recommendation on West Runberg Lane last month. We did receive updated information from the City of Austin on January 26th. And so we've got the updated information here. And we'll be recommending that this project be scheduled for fiscal year 2028. Unlike the other ones, this one will extend a 4-lane major divided arterial and will include sidewalks, bike lanes, and a new signalized intersection. So this is basically a new section of West Runberg Lane. And then finally, Breaker Lane North. This one is one that Travis County, in coordination with the City of Austin, we've removed this one from refunding consideration. That one's going to kind of go back to the drawing board and will be resubmitted at a later date in discussions between the city and Travis County. So that one is not being recommended. So let's talk about just summarize everything I was talking about. So we're recommending the 2 City of Austin projects, West Runberg Lane and Lakeline Boulevard, as well as Travis County's Pierce Lane. All the funding you see here is associated with the construction phase. And the federal share is the commitment that the policy board would be making for surface transportation block grant funding. And so that would total $96.2 million. We also have 16.4 million transportation development credits that are associated with the federal share for Pierce Lane. I do want to point out we had some discussions about the limits for Pierce Lane at the last board meeting. So we went back and looked at that, and so the recommendation here that you're seeing for the 65.7 million, that represents the limits that were deferred in 2020. And so that was what the board had approved and was deferred, and so we're bringing that back. In discussions through the design process, it does look like we need to extend those limits to east of Wolf Lane. And so that's what the $4.7 million represents. That's something that's currently under discussion. And Commissioner Beckett had mentioned that, if the board does decide they want to make that adjustment, the total commitment would be $70.5 million with corresponding TDCs of $17.6 million. But right now, the recommendation is the original deferred limits for discussion for the policy board. So that's the refunding scenario that we're discussing, and then we have the set-aside scenario. So the set-aside scenario, these are projects, we had about 12 projects that were removed from the deferral process altogether. This is for different reasons, typically scope changes or the project was no longer valid. But in some cases, the project sponsor moved forward with the projects voluntarily, implemented it with local funding rather than wait for refunding from the policy board. So looking at those projects and at the direction of the policy board, we identified those 4 projects. We have 3 City of Austin ITS projects, and then 1 from the City of Cedar Park. This is New Hope Drive. And you can see the original awards there, the $28 million worth of awards. And so after the board meeting in January, we reached out to staff from those sponsors to confirm implementation of those projects and then also look at what was actually expended so that we could bring that back for consideration in the set-aside scenario. So you'll see we were able to confirm that New Hope Drive is under construction currently, and the cost is $22.6 million. We did receive information from the City of Austin. You see the local expenditures there. However, we didn't receive information in time to confirm it for this recommendation, so that's not part of this recommendation, but we did, and to be fully transparent, wanted to provide this information to the policy board for their consideration. So let's talk about kind of the impacts here. This is the financial forecast, and we're mainly talking about surface transportation block grant funding, but if you see in the yellow, this is funding that's currently committed and programmed in the Transportation Improvement Program. Our funding really starts to become available in fiscal year 2026, and so the refunding scenario would be programmed using money from fiscal year 2026 and 2027. And depending on the action of the policy board on the set-aside scenario, we would be using fiscal year 2028 funding. The only thing I want to point out, these are the 3 funding sources. We have the Carbon Reduction Program and the Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Program, which we'll be doing a project call later this year for those funding sources. And then, importantly, the Infrastructure and Investments Jobs Act guarantees funding through 2026. Anything beyond that are projections, but we are assuming continual resolutions. That's been the history for the last 30, 40 years, so there's no reason to expect that would be any different this time around. And then finally, kind of a financial impact analysis related to a project call. So with the committed project call, if we only take into consideration the committed, we would be doing a project call for all funding sources later this year. Should the board adopt the refunding scenario, we're looking at doing a project call starting in 2 years with board approval in 3 years. And then further with the set-aside scenario, that project call would start in 3 years with board approval in 4 years. And so finally, there's a couple other things I just wanted to point out as the recommendation assumptions. All 3 of the projects, or all the projects associated with this process, do have outstanding development milestones that need to be taken care of. And we're just assuming that those development milestones will be completed in a timely manner and that the sponsors will continue to report on these projects and coordinate with CAMPO and TxDOT accordingly. Again, the local government is responsible for all the cost overruns and any additional funding requirements due to design or any other changes after this board commitment today. This represents the final commitment to these projects from the policy board. And then finally, in regarding to the set-aside scenario, I did want to talk about kind of process afterwards, is that we'll be utilizing our adopted evaluation process and criteria for that set-aside funding. We would begin working with the project sponsors immediately to evaluate candidate projects for readiness. And then we will score them, even though it won't be competitive. We will score them just to provide that information on the projects to the policy board so we understand the benefits of the projects that will be recommended for that. So with that, there's two recommendations. We have 24-2-8A, and that's associated with the refunding scenario, and then 2024-2-B, and that's related to the set-aside scenario. So with that, that concludes the presentation, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions and happy to take them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So if we could, so that we can follow Robert's rules, get a motion on the table and then a second, then we'll be up for discussion. All right. Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? Second came from over here. Oh, sorry, Mayor Schrader. All right, so there's a motion and a second to approve staff recommendation. All right, now we're open for discussion. Council member.
I would like to, I believe that the B motion is for the set-aside. I would like to move to postpone that till April, and if I get a second, I will explain why.
All right, there's a second by Councilmember Harper Madison.
Thank you. First, I want to really appreciate the work of the CAMPO staff and all of the other staff who've been really working hard to move through this process in a fair way after the decisions that this body made to fund I-35 and use our funding to do that. I know it has not been an easy process, and I really appreciate sticking to the commitment of trying to make sure that all of the projects get done. In reviewing this material and after absorbing direction that was given in January, have some concerns here about whether we're being true to that with respect to these ITS projects that the City of Austin has. These are different kinds of projects. It's not the same thing. It's kind of building a road, and then you know the road is built and whatever. In this case, we had 400 intersections that we were hoping to be covering with these three types of projects. When we did our local funding, we covered about 100 of those intersections. So the project is not complete. There's still 300 intersections that need to be done. I have not, when I was absorbing the information that came with the motion that the chair had made that Cedar Park should be funded fully, which is a $10 million additional expenditure here, I didn't understand that would then put the City of Austin down $10 million, and we also have 300 intersections that are not complete. I don't have a full sort of resolution for that today, but given that we're talking about not having a funding call until 2028, I would ask that we take a couple other extra months to be able to get this right and address the set-aside information correctly. If the board wants to move forward with the Cedar Park at the full cost, which I think would also be in the spirit of what we're talking about, I'm fine to have that come back in April as well, but I think we need to have an alternative solution for the City of Austin. One option would be for us to have a set-aside for the local expenditures, but then to have the other 300 intersections be considered a refunded project. Again, I don't know how to make this motion other than to say that we postpone the whole set-aside because it is complicated, and we provide direction to work with the City of Austin to come up with a solution that is a combination of set-aside and refunding that is in line with the spirit of which we have proposed addressing the postponed and deferred projects.
So, Councilmember, I'm going to attempt to say this in a way that I hope makes sense to everybody else, but also makes sense to me as well. Basically, what I'm hearing is if you look at the column that says original award for those three City of Austin projects, your request is that the full amount that was originally awarded be considered for refund or set aside, however we want to term that.
So the project was for 400 intersections. I would like to make sure that we get 400 intersections done, just the way we have been going about getting streets done. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not able to fully resolve this in the course of this meeting, but one option, yes, would be to give the City of Austin the original award and set aside, but that's not going to meet the costs of doing 300 intersections, just as we've had a lot of our refunding projects have their amounts expanded. We would have to expand that for inflation and the additional costs. I do not today know what those costs would be, which is why I'm suggesting that you come back at the
Okay.
April meeting with a plan so that we get those 300 intersections that were not addressed with these systems, so that we're able to do that in the future. Or we have a system, and it may be that a set aside is a better way to do that. I would want you to work that out with our staff. My concern is that we have 300 intersections that we can't check those off the list for our region as being done, that we identified as, this is one of the high priority projects. I'm not even sure which of the categories of funding, if it's the same category of funding of other ones or not. But those 300 intersections still need to be done. And, the way this is working, we are providing funding for Cedar Park to go $10 million over the budget originally. We are getting a quarter of the projects done, and are not, just by the change that was offered in January, which I didn't understand. That's what we were doing. I don't object to moving forward with Cedar Park at that, but I do think we need to have that solution, and I think the most fair way would be to move forward with the item together in April with a solution, or if it needs to be May, that's fine. We're not making a call until 28, so there's not a big rush that this has to be at this meeting, and I would let the experts figure out a solution that is in line with the spirit, which, again, I'm very proud that we as a body have found a way to do that. But these are 300 intersections that can be safer for everyone in the region who would go through those.
Okay. If I may,
Just I guess a clarification on the request, and then I'll come to you, Mayor. So I guess, and I've already shared this with you, but the frustration is the request of information has been going on since July from the city of Austin. And, and do we even know at this point that what's being done is within the scope? I mean, the staff has not gotten the information from your staff to prove up, and that's why they weren't able to make a recommendation today. And at what point in time do we say, okay, you can't keep missing deadlines? And, the rest of the policy board voted in 2020 to fund a significant project for the city of Austin. There's multiple projects on here, including Lakeline and others that are being refunded for the city of Austin. At what point in time can you tell your staff, you got a deadline you got to meet and get the information to us? And I'm venting my frustration, because you've got the biggest staff in the region, probably times 10, that should be able to comply with these requests, and it's my job as a policy board member to stay on my staff to ensure they're responsive. It's not CAMPO's job to go to Pflugerville staff or Williamson County staff and say, you need to get this to us. So, and I'm venting my frustration today, but it's the frustration, I think, of other board members as well, that we continue to have a lack of input in timely manner from the city.
if I could add to that, 2028 seems like a long time off, but I guess to me at least 2024 seems like a long time off until I look at the calendar. And so I think for Cedar Park, while yeah, I understand maybe you're just asking for a 2-month delay, in order to be ready for that call for projects, we have a lot of work to do. And I've started looking at how we could put that $22 million to work for the good of the region. In particular, we're cognizant of the very strong commitment we made to our residents to increase bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure as well as road infrastructure and our mass mobility plan. And so I respectfully ask that we follow staff's recommendation and at least approve the portion set aside for Cedar Park. And then, of course, at our next meeting, we can pick up on Austin's as suggested. Hopefully by then there's more insight as to where Austin will be and what can be compensated. 4 years later and a quarter of the projects are done. I don't know what 2 months will do, But I certainly, though am eager to support Austin and the work of those traffic monitoring systems. It's been an enormous benefit to Cedar Park, and I know those intersections will be greatly helpful to Austin and everybody else in the region who, of course, has to drive through Austin quite a bit.
Ash, oh my gosh, good Lord. Ashby, what happened with, I could have sworn, wasn't there another project, was Runberg involved in that too? Can you talk about that too? Let's have a full discussion.
So, actually, Ryan can provide more detail than I can, but I will tell you, there was, Runberg was submitted, and there were improvements there in terms of both adding capacity on the roadway portion of it, but also on the non-motorized, so sidewalk, bike lane portion of it. Runberg also goes through census tracts that are environmental justice related. We, as CAMPO staff, have been looking at Runberg since we did the arterials study, because, long term, I'm just putting this out there for the city to think about. We would like to see Runberg somehow get past MOPAC and start to connect up that eastern portion to the Arboretum. There's a lot of movement that needs to happen in there. So, yes. So I'm diverging a little bit, but so yes. So we initially did not get that information back. Then Director Mendoza was able, after the last meeting, to get us the Runberg information.
So
we were able to go through it, and so that is actually in the recommendation.
So we were able to get the information from Runberg. I definitely heard the frustration on.
Let me add this piece. You didn't ask me this, but let me add this piece. On the piece for the traffic signalization projects, we got a summary, and then we got a whole bunch of invoices. It was not what we had asked for. So we have not been able to go through all of that information yet to confirm, one, that it's in the scope, and two, that they're actually these projects. It was a bunch of invoices from the consultants. And so I don't know at this point.
And so, one of the discussions that we had at the meeting was, if you have an AFA with TxDOT, there's a certain format that you have to submit, which we would have had on these projects. And it looks like on those specific projects, roughly 8.4 million that you've got basically receipts for, but they haven't been verified that they're in scope.
Correct.
But if that meets the spirit of this, I'm okay with approving that pending verification that 8.4 million is actually within the scope of what was approved by the policy board back in 2018 as sort of a way, and then the city can come back with the others proposal at, we can handle that separately at another time. That way, at least we're setting aside an amount to be proven up, even though it's past the deadline. It's still, tries to accommodate a bit.
So, and the council member Alter's point, what I'm hearing, again, I live in a van by the river, but I kind of just trying to understand what's going on here. There's 300 different intersections that currently need coverage and support that aren't being reflective in this current proposal, given the fact that the information that was given, you weren't able to, Ashby was not able to decipher, staff was not able to decipher, was actually applicable to those intersections. However, because of the need and the urgency with that, you'd like to see if there's an ability to actually work here and either defer this for 2 months, but it sounds like the mayor over here is going to go Tupac on that comment, or if we can work to see about, and I think that's what the chair said, at least set aside what was originally in that scope, the amount that was in that scope, because we know those projects have changed, and they likely haven't really. I'm guessing, because I trust your staff, that those receipts will cover those 300 intersections in there from there as well. Would that help, or
the
100? Or the 100?
If I could just clarify, so what we were able to fund, thank you, Councilmember, we were able to fund with our local expenditures 100 of 400 intersections. And
And
my
that's
numbers may
what
be off
these-
or a few intersections here or there.
And is that what these receipts, you
Those
think
receipts would be
represent?
for those expenditures that are represented there, which roughly covers 100, give or take a few. That's my,
But you don't know.
but I don't know the exact number of intersections. I don't. I assume that our transportation department does. But it was essentially, we did 100 of the 400 that were in our original proposal, so those 300 need these improvements. What I would like to suggest, I think that the chair offered a interesting way forward, would be for me to withdraw my postponement and make a substitute motion that would approve the Cedar Park expenditure set-aside proposal at the $22,619,961, and then provisionally, upon confirmation, approve the local expenditure as a set-aside for those 3 projects for the amounts that are on that screen, with direction to staff to work with the City of Austin to come back with a refunding project mechanism either in April or May, whenever you have it sufficiently ready to come back to us, so that we can complete the project that was originally approved by the policy board, was one of the highest priority projects that we had in the scoring mechanisms, so that we could move that forward.
Mayor?
Yes, and so, with all due respect, understand y'all's position, understand you're advocating for the city of Austin, but I'm opposed to waiting on this. I think that, we as a body have to hold our various entities accountable, and I think that our CAMPO staff and executive director, they don't set these deadlines arbitrarily. And I think by allowing, our various entities to ignore these deadlines and ignore requests, it's a disrespect to the CAMPO staff, to be blunt. And also, I think that every other entity in here is making decisions on a daily basis, with these deadlines in mind. We have decisions on our council meeting tomorrow night that is, where we're trying to figure out when the next call is going to be. And so we're all having to move forward and make decisions based upon these deadlines. And so I think that at some point we've got to stand up and go, hey, the deadlines are the deadlines. They're not arbitrary. A lot of work has gone into making decisions based upon those deadlines. And so just to show support for the CAMPO staff, I think we've got to stick to our guns and move forward. Now, again, I think those projects can come back like the rest of the regions can come back and ask for money when there's another call. And, I'm sure they're worthy and can be considered along with everything else that's going on. But I'm also concerned about, too, due to the kind of the open-ended nature of the cost of those projects, it could push the call date back another year. And we don't know that. And like I said, and so in the meantime, we're all trying to make decisions based upon when we think that next call is going to be. So I think at some point we just got to set the rules and everybody follow the rules would be my opinion.
Mayor, what would you think about the chair's proposal that we have a provisional amount that's allotted for that and gives CAMPO staff time to actually look at those receipts and then have confirmation at our April?
Yeah, April will be the earliest.
Yeah, at the earliest, April or May meeting.
So that's the local expenditures, but again, I would go back and say that city staff needs to submit it in a way that they would be submitting a request, not just send a bunch of receipts, but submit it in a way that was requested. And the things that have been done, if they've been done and they are within that scope, the city needs to be reimbursed for them, just like we're doing Cedar Park. I don't have a problem with that, even though we're past the deadline. You got something in. So let's verify that, and then we can deal with the rest at a subsequent discussion.
I think it was definitely done informally. Given the time frame, I guess is what you were trying to your best to do that. Consequently, you were able to cover Runberg, and you saw that you're like, hey, listen, okay, we got this, we got that, that's good to go. Definitely have more formal of a process. I do understand and sympathize with the fact that we want to make sure that we have a practice and a procedure that's put in place to actually allow for that. I think this is probably a good inflection point to make sure we do that moving forward. But I do think that at the same time that I think that's a good compromise to do this right now, approve it all, do that, right now with the fact that in hopes we'll be able to see when we can actually verify those receipts are actually matched to what's actually was originally done, or originally requested over there, and then move forward for that. My suggestion would be this. This is what I've said before, and I've said it to y'all numerous times, is that as a board, this is one of the few boards where everyone, as a region, we all have to work together. We have to get things done. We all have our various different areas that we have to work with. We have our various staffs that we need to make sure work with and make sure things get done with. Moving forward, it'd be great if we can start to have some of these conversations weeks, not days, not hours, weeks ahead of time before we have a board meeting, so that we don't have to have these discussions at a board meeting. And, I would highly encourage I think the chair said it, I've said it myself, just let us know. Let's have a conversation. Invite us to your meetings. I'm more than welcome to come to and do these things, because I think that just works better that way from there as well. I hate to have to deal with these things on the dais as opposed to, hey, listen, we had time to be able to talk about this beforehand right there as well. We've got to work together, and honestly, we've got a good group of people, and we're smart and educated people who can get things done. We've got great staff. Let's just try to see if we can do this a little earlier.
Well, with that community spirit in mind, I'll second Councilmember Alter's motion.
Which is basically on the set-aside scenario, approving the local expenditure column, the recommended local expenditure.
Provisionally approving local expenditure
Assuming that they can prove up by the next meeting that those are within the original 2018 scope.
And if I could add, there was direction with that to come back for Ashby to work with the City of Austin staff to come back with an appropriate refunding or other scenario that addresses the other 300.
That can be addressed separately.
Yeah, it can be addressed separately, but I want that, however that gets addressed under CAMPO rules, I don't know, but that is the direction, just as we had direction to reimburse at the expenditure rate in January.
Okay, I'll wait until.
So I think so there was a motion, but then there was a substitute motion that said to approve as opposed to approving the staff recommendation, which did not include the 3 City of Austin projects, on the set-aside scenario, to approve the local expenditure column, which includes $3,500,000 and $4.9 million respectively for those projects, assuming that they can be proven up that they are within the 2018 scope, and let's set a deadline that has to be done by a month from now, so that staff has time to review that. So a month from now would be March 12th.
Is that enough? Do you think that's enough time for your staff?
Where's Richard? Okay.
There's a thumbs
I
up.
saw thumbs up. Okay.
So that's
I'd rather have a hook 'em, but I guess we'll deal with that.
And there's
Got it.
direction to come back with the other.
Yeah, that will be voted on separately.
Councilmember Fuentes.
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Vanessa Fuentes, Austin City Council. I just want to appreciate the conversation that we're having today and the opportunity for us to remain consistent with previous policy that was adopted by this board. And I truly approach this work in a collaborative spirit, and I hear and I understand the frustration on ensuring that city staff is able to meet the deadlines and that we're on top of our deliverables. So to the extent that we can have that heads up when there are requests being made to our city staff, so that we can accordingly follow up with city staff to ensure that we are doing everything that we can as policy board members to ensure that we're meeting the deadline. Please know that I am open and committed to doing that work. I want for us to work collaboratively. Several of us are new faces to this planning board, and know that while I represent the City of Austin, I want all of us to work together, and certainly there have been some strides made, and we're committed to that collaborative work moving forward. So Vice Chair Matayer, I appreciate your comments about us having these conversations in advance of the meeting to the extent possible.
All right.
So I have a question before the vote. I'm trying to make sure I understand what I'm being directed to do. So, Councilmember Alter, The question I have on the motion is, and this is not on the column that's there for the local expenditures, but the to be done still piece. So it was not only what was awarded, but also inflation for the year that it will be programmed in, is what I heard you say.
Well, just like other refunding projects,
Yes.
it would be treated more like a refunding project than a set aside for the remainder of the intersections that need to be addressed.
Okay,
But if that ends up proving to be problematic, then come work with the city of Austin and come with an alternative. That is my solution for today, but I want to defer to your guys' expertise if there's an alternative method that
okay,
achieves the same goal.
and I can, Director Mendoza and I talk on a regular basis, and so we will do that. And what I'll need to see is for the remainder, that 300 or whatever it is that's not done yet, I need to kind of know what year they're going to go in, because I got to know what year to apply the inflation rate to.
Absolutely. And we will, as Councilmember Fuentes indicated, we will circle back with our staff, and the frustration has been noted, and we will work with them. And I think that Mr. Mendoza has heard that, and will hear it from us as well. Thank you.
Okay, and then.
So the
I'm sorry.
deadline is March 12th at 5 PM, just to be clear. Okay,
So I had a second question, and this is going back to the item on Pierce Lane. So
the recommendation was the total cost column on that one, and I think that was the motion, and then the local expenditure column on the set-aside scenario.
are you good with that, Commissioner Bay?
Yeah, I'm a little confused because the numbers, I'm not sure what the motion meant. Where is that spreadsheet? Can you go back to,
It's right there.
okay, my eyes are now in focus. On mine, that 7515 is the exact same number, oddly, that they're saying if we included the extension,
Yeah, that 70 million, that's the total project cost to east of Wolf Lane.
when you say to east of Wolf Lane.
Yeah, there's Wolf Lane and then there's east of Wolf Lane. Wolf Lane was what was originally deferred, and that cost 65.7 million. To take it east of Wolf Lane, it's 70.5 million. That's the project limits to east of Wolf Lane. And that's where the difference is, that 4.7 million.
See, I'm reading it.
And so right now, the recommendation is to take it to Wolf Lane. We've had discussions with
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But down here on my sheet, there's a
second option for the board if they want to make that adjustment on
yeah,
the bottom.
and this is why I'm confused. It says to cover the entire limits, the commitment would be 70,515,000, which is the exact same number as that.
Yeah, and that was the recommendation that you brought forth. So I wanted to make sure that was included
So
in
the
there for the board to consider.
recommendation-
But the TDCs would be 17.6, so
That's to match if y'all federalize the entire 70.5, the TDCs would have to be adjusted upwards too.
Okay, so back to the
You understand my
motion
confusion?
on the floor. It's the set-aside amount, but with the adjusted TDC, or, excuse me, the refunding scenario of 75.5 for the Pierce Lane project. But we need to amend the TDCs to reflect that of 17,628, 750.
See, I read it like that 7515 should be in the federal share column if we were going to.
And that's what it looked like last month, but then we broke out what was, and we had to go back to what was originally deferred in 2019, which was to Wolf Lane, which is just that 65, so. So
Right,
we carved
so-
out that eastern part,
So-
so.
What was the motion? If that helps
For the
anybody else, it
total-
will
motion
me.
was,
The total cost of the Runberg project, the Lakeline project, and the Pierce Lane in that total cost column that you see right there, with the additional request from Travis County of TDCs, but that needs to be adjusted to 17,628,750.
That's if the policy board approves the full 70, federalizes the full 70.5,
but that would go
yes.
to east of Wolf Lane, Commissioner Bailey.
the 700 feet or whatever it is?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I want to be clear, because my concern is, if the only schematic I've ever seen takes it to the full limits, beyond what was approved in the TIP in 2019 or whenever it was. And if it's constructed only to the original limits, they're literally going to have to tear apart a portion of what they do because it's going to have some kind of knuckle back in, which to me is creating a worse safety scenario than what's there right now.
And the motion on the floor is to fund that.
Okay, I wanted to be clear because I
And
am
that's what I
utterly
was trying to
confused.
Okay, you're trying to snatch defeat from the hands of victory here.
Apparently I am.
Okay.
I'm self-destructive that way.
Shut up.
All right, so we're voting on the amended motion of the total cost number here with the amended TDC amount and the set-aside of the local expenditure column on the set-aside amount, and with a March 12th deadline of getting, in the form of if you were submitting it to TxDOT for reimbursement for the $3,500,000 and $4.9 million. Okay, so is that clear for everybody? All right, all in
Thank you.
favor of the amended motion? Aye. All right, so that motion passes unanimously. No, did anybody vote against it? I'm sorry. Yes. Okay, so the amendment has passed, so now we need to go back to the original motion. And so the original motion was to pass it without those. So we can either just let that one die, or we can vote that one down, because we just voted for the other one. So,
The table in motion, she
we can withdraw
withdrew.
the original motion.
Or they can withdraw it.
Yeah, we can,
We can vote it down, right?
No, there was a motion,
let's just vote on the original motion. But if
but
you
we
voted-
just amended it.
Yeah, I think if we're going up the ladder, now we'd approve the actual 8A as presented, 8B as amended.
Right.
Now we
So
need
if
to
you
vote
like
on the
this
motion
idea,
as
we wanna vote
amended.
for
Yeah, so we're going to vote on the motion as amended, which
Right.
we just
But
voted on.
we just did.
No, that was the amendment.
So we all voted to agree on what the amendment would be. Now we have to actually vote on the amendment to the original motion.
Yes, so you basically vote the same way you did the
I
last
read
time.
that book, but I've
Bottom
forgotten
line.
what it says.
All right,
Everybody just vote yes.
No.
all in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
There we go.
Okay, anybody opposed? All right, so the motion, the
apprehensive
amended
aye.
motion passes. We will move on to item, let's see, where are we? Item number 9. Yeah, and just, by the way, as a reminder, don't leave. We've got, staff in a minute is going to bring out, we've got some Valentine's snacks, so people please, proudly provided by your chair and vice chair. And so please hang around for a little bit and discuss, but the quicker we get done, the quicker we can move on to that, so no pressure here. All right, item number 9.
No pressure, I'm good. This item is to discuss performance measure targets. So when Congress adopted the MAP 21 legislation in 2012, they mandated that state DOTs and MPOs create a transportation management, performance management system designed to help policymakers know what investments to make, not just in the transportation infrastructure, but also how their resources are spent. How CAMPO does this is through various activities, including a project selection criteria, and then we monitor the impact and the investment from those projects. We adopt regional targets, which we're doing here today, and then we document that in our TIP, plan, and our studies. So how does this work? On the left column there, Congress sets what's known as performance measure goals, performance measure goal areas. And then the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration, they set the goals, then they set the performance measures, and then it's up to the state DOTs and the MPOs to create the targets and then develop plans and programs that dictate how those targets are being met. And so the targets that we're adopting, or staff will recommend next month when we bring out to adopt this year, are safety targets, transit asset management, and transit safety targets. In the second column there, for those blue boxes, what they show is that the state has adopted lower targets for all those categories, except for one, which remains the same from the previous year. The ones in parentheses and are bolded are the new targets. All of them are lower than the previous year, just to show how aggressively the state is trying to adopt lower targets and trying to meet them as we move on. For columns 4 and 6, the transit-related ones, we just recently got that information from the transit providers in the region, so we will bring that back and update it to the board at the next meeting. This is not the only thing that we do for safety. We also have a couple of online dashboards that not just show the performance measurements online, but we also have a crash dashboard, which looks back over the previous 10 years for every crash in our region. It dictates where it happened, when it happened, why it happened. Basically, it's meant to provide a really easy way to identify what the crash trends are in our region. As you heard earlier today, we're also going to start doing various safety action plans for the region. So again, these are just some of the things that we do to promote safety in our plans and processes. And that's my presentation. I look forward to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nirav. And any questions on this item?
Well, you say available online, that's publicly available? So anyone can see it? Or
It's on our website, yeah.
Awesome.
It's a informative dashboard.
So that's a really good set of information right there. And you talked about how we have every crash going back to, you said 2018?
2013.
2013. Are those self-reported, or how do you able to go ahead and actually extrapolate, get that information?
That comes from TxDOT's crash repository system, and they get that information directly from reported crashes to law enforcement.
So the ones that are going to be missing of that are the fender benders where people exchange information, but law enforcement's not called to the scene. So there's going to be some that aren't there, pieces that aren't there, but it'll be the vast majority. Any other questions on that one?
Question right here.
Yes.
Thank you. So a question for Director Ashby. Are these targets in line with our Vision Zero goals and benchmarks?
So the targets, the targets are in line with TxDOT's Road to Zero. It's not the same as the city's Vision Zero, but I'll say the spirit of it is the same, is to see declining numbers going in fatalities going forward, as opposed to showing increasing numbers.
And can you remind us what TxDOT's goal is?
I'm sorry, could you repeat
She
your
was
question?
asking what was TxDOT's goal.
Yeah, so it's 0 fatalities by 2050, and I believe fatalities cut in half by 2035.
Okay, and so how is that different than Vision Zero? Is just because it has a longer time frame?
Can you, how does Vision Zero?
The Vision Zero is that 0 deaths resulting from crashes.
But by what time?
Do you know what the horizon year was, Councilmember?
I don't know if there is a time frame tied to it. I think it's a goal set each year to have no one die on our roadways each year.
Okay.
But I think there's a time frame to it, if I recall.
I thought there was.
Yeah. But, I mean, we've historically, part of the challenge is being able to measure something different and report on it beyond our capabilities. And so that's why we've continued to work with TxDOT and kind of be in alignment with them. But the policy board has adopted this, not the City of Austin's criteria.
Gotcha. And I think, as a policy planning board, to me, I would be comfortable with us having more aggressive goals when it comes to ensuring that we have safe roadways for all Texans, especially in our metropolitan region, that no single Texan dies as a result of a car crash. So to the extent, I want to echo colleagues, my support for us adopting a Vision Zero target as we do our performance measures.
And I think, Councilmember, I think that's part of the direction of what staff is trying to do. We've been looking at that for a couple of years, so hopefully by the end of the year we have something together that we can look at and see about that, because given that we saw the number of fatalities went up this past year, and we've had concerns, honestly, since, COVID, some of the, come back regarding traffic and fatalities, I think we're all on the same page here, just like what you said regarding, hey, let's be more aggressive. And once we get something as a region together, then we can start to compare it to make the state, but.
And the really critical, every time this comes up, I can't emphasize enough, and it's why years ago, CAMPO actually helped resuscitate the HERO program then, which the state has now kind of readopted, is helping clear the roadways, helps prevent accidents, but also enforcement is huge. I mean, there's not too many wrecks in Cedar Park because Cedar Park is on it for enforcement. And that makes a huge difference, law enforcement of our roadways, because the threat of getting a ticket works for a lot of people. So
Commissioner, because what I heard was basically us not adopting the state's, going forward, not adopting the state's numbers, but coming up with our own.
well, no, that was the ask. That wasn't the direction.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to explain on that, because we discussed that before. What that would mean is, and we as a region have the ability to do that, but we have to, what the law says is we have to come up with the data to support it. So coming up with that data is very expensive. And that's one of the reasons why we're using the TxDOT approach, because we can still get to where we're going without, but we can show you what that number looks like.
I mean, and I don't know, sometimes I feel like we have these conversations like 7 or 8 times, right? But yeah, you've said that before, so just want to reiterate that with her as well. And I think that once we have that in place, then we can start talking about Councilmember Fuentes talked about being more aggressive on what we're going about that.
Yeah, because I mean.
What I think is important is that, what I would like to see is what does that look like for us adopting our own targets as an MPO that is more aggressive than the state, knowing that we have a shared vision for our community of 0 traffic fatalities and serious injuries. How can we start integrating that into all of the work that we're doing? I know we also gave you direction to negotiate the contract regarding the roadway safety plan. How can we incorporate goals and performance measures within that work that are more aggressive? And, I would hate for it, and you mentioned it was expensive, but I would hate for money to be a barrier for us ensuring the safety of our roads.
Understood. Thank you.
And I kind of want to reemphasize, because we truly have this discussion every time this comes up. Using the TxDOT data does not prevent us from getting there at all. So just to clarify that.
Well, and if I might add, the reason I asked whether this is public available is the more I've read and studied about Vision Zero and how important it is, the real challenge, right, is educating your drivers and making that behavior change. And so I think the more data we can put out there for everybody, every resident of our region about, why this is important, how, everything else we do here, this is a big step forward. And so I'm excited to see this new dashboard and to know that everyone in our region will have access to it.
And I appreciate you saying that, Mayor. Every month, CAMPO staff sits down with TxDOT district staff, and we go through all the crashes for the previous month. And I tell you, more than 95% of those fatalities are behavioral issues.
Yeah.
Well, and Ashby, to that point, what the mayor was saying, maybe we should, and I don't know, I mean, again, y'all the SMEs, we just work here. Every municipality and, governmentally, locally, they should have a link to this, on their website, because this is information that people will want. Again, I always say it over and over again. People don't just drive if they're in Bastrop, just in Bastrop or in Vernon or anything else with there. People need to be cognizant of aware of these things. And I think it'd be much easier if you put something in there. People send weekly stuff to their citizens, so it'd be interesting to include just a link here. It's a traffic report right over here with that.
And one of the things we're also working on is I've asked Joyce to work with our consultants to develop what I'm going to basically term as a safety public service announcement. So something that talks about, driving, biking and walking and safety, things that the individuals can take on as personal responsibility, that we would distribute out to y'all as well. So that's being worked on.
Don't be the, what I call the immortal pedestrian.
Yes.
That thinks, oh, I can step out and that person's going to stop.
Yeah.
They're supposed to.
You would have hated me in college then.
The immortal college student.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just jump in. It sounds like
one more quick question.
the conversation's kind of wrapping up. I believe that most of our city plans, no matter what the topic, usually have a target date of around 2030 or 2040.
Okay.
I know our strategic mobility plan is a goal date of 2039, so I know that at least at our local level, we're trying very hard to do our part as much as possible. I fear that if the deadlines and the goals get pushed out really far, then you've had too much changeover in staff and too many different viewpoints if you change directors and things of that nature. So we try to keep them into very short, 10, 20, 15, types of windows. So I want to make sure that, the state of Texas may have its goals because they've got a whole bunch of MPOs that they've got to work with and a whole bunch of regions and different transportation initiatives. And so whatever we can do here in the Central Texas region, I think would go a long way into making sure that our roads are safer. And I believe enforcement's part of it. I also believe that road design can play a very healthy role in trying to make sure that all modes can be accommodated no matter where people are traveling.
And what's great about that, Mayor Pro Tem, is that we get we get the model in, the information that we need from TxDOT by the end of the year, then we can be more aggressive about setting that timeline locally and then working on that moving forward from there. Because I agree, especially if we want to change behavior and, we have a lot of major roadways and infrastructure projects coming up over here, so it's rather do it sooner rather than later on that. And I think it needs to be done as a region than just individually, because that's how you sync and you change things, is when you do things regionally over here on these things.
Agree 100%, and I think the more we can collaborate, the more we are able to help the people you were talking about that don't just stop at one county line or in one city. If we can create that change of driving behavior together, then we know the people who are traveling through all the counties that we all come from, that everyone's going to be safer.
Okay. I don't see any other hands on that item, so we will move on. That was just discussion, so we'll move on to item number 10, the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So last week I was in Washington, D.C., and the meeting of the the National Association for State Departments of Transportation, it's called AASHTO. They had their annual policy briefing meeting, which is a fairly big deal in Washington, D.C. So both the civil service head of Federal Highway Administration and the political appointee head of Federal Highway Administration come and stay the full 2 days at that meeting. You generally don't see that. They come in and they leave, but they stay for the full 2 days for that one. They also get folks out of Appropriations Committee on the Hill, and then the members out of the Congressional House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, the staff members on that, and then also out of Senate Environment and Public Works. And Senate Environment and Public Works covers the transit side as opposed to the highway side. So I was asked to go to that meeting by Mark Williams, who is the Executive Director of TxDOT. And Mr. Williams was asked to be on a panel that talked about current challenges of implementing the existing federal transportation bill, but also looking forward about things that we would like to see considered for change for the next federal transportation reauthorization bill, which is really only a couple of years away. So so I was on that panel with Mr. Williams, but also with his counterpart from the Florida Department of Transportation, and then also blast for the past for everybody, Randy Clark, who was our previous director of Capital Metro, who is now the director of the, I forget what the acronym stands for, but WMATA is the DC area version of Metro. So as you might guess, there was a fair amount of discussion, not from me, on the new greenhouse gas rule that came out. At that time, This was the day before we found out the particular matter 2.5 rule had come out, so we did not discuss that. But TxDOT and Florida DOT discussed the greenhouse gas one quite a bit. I used that opportunity to, one, talk about the partnership we have here on this board with TxDOT and the state, but also to talk about CAMPO staff's partnership with the Austin District to advance projects, and that was the quarter program that we're working on now. So there was a lot of interest in that, and as I was telling Tucker before the meeting started, Director Williams was very happy about what he heard, and so we had a good visit with them. I also had a meeting with senior Federal Highway Administration staff separately about concerns mainly around the discretionary programs. We're finding it, not just us, but also other organizations like ours across the country. It takes a whole bunch of time and money to apply for those grants. We've been lucky because this body, gave us that $7 million in concession money. We've been able to use some of that with the consultants to sort of pay to help apply for money, and we've been successful with some of the discretionary grants, but a lot of our smaller sister agencies cannot find the money to do that. They can't submit. A lot of them have a greater need than we do, but they can't apply for the money. So one of the things that I raised was perhaps we need to look at what discretionary programs, the new ones, lend themselves to becoming formula money as opposed to discretionary money, but also in some cases considering that money to be 100% instead of 80%. Because even though the current bill pumped a lot of new money into the federal aid system, if you couldn't match it before, then you can't match it now either.
It's going to be harder because they're more expensive.
And now we're seeing balances piling up every year at the end of the year, and that money's redistributed in August of what was spent between the states. That money's the balance of what's piling up is piling up every year because of the discretionary programs. The money can't get out the door. So I also offered to the US DOT senior leadership that was there that I thought it was time for us to revisit the federal air quality non-attainment, the conformity process, because I feel like, one, that's been a numbers game for years, and two, if you look at Houston, where I was before, as an organization, they had already used all those strategies that were cost effective, and they were down to those things that were really expensive that only eliminated pounds of emissions as opposed to tons of emissions every year. So what I offered to US DOT was, let's have a conversation about what's the goal of the conformity process and see if that can be adjusted to where we are today. So council member, last meeting you had asked about the air quality memo, and we got that out in the packet. I hope everybody had a chance to look at that.
It's the last 6 pages of the packet.
So, and then we found out about the PM 2.5 standard being lowered from 12 to 9 only a few days ago. We have spoken with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, TCQ. They got this the same time we did. They don't have enough information yet either. They have told us they can come to the April meeting. So what I would like to do is we can discuss the particular matter 2.5, the new standard, at the April meeting, but also I can walk and with the assistance of TCQ, can walk through sort of the general air quality things that aren't particular to PM 2.5.
Okay, so that was, is that it? Or you still have anything else?
That was it.
Okay, so be sure and look at pages 111 through 116 for Ashby's memo of the packet. And again, since it was such a new release of information, there was no way to capture that at this meeting. So we'll move on to item number 11.
I did want to say, I wanted to say a thank you to Mayor Pro Tem Ellis and Councilmember Alter for staying on top of that, looking at that information and being aware of it. It's good that you got the same information at the same time as Ashby, but it's I love y'all working, trying to get that stuff done, so thank you.
And I've got a quick, on that point, would love to know information. It's my understanding that if that level is going to stay where it is, there might be some sort of length of time where over a certain number of years that the MPOs, in Texas may have to figure out how they want to best reach that attainment. What I'm seeing right now is if we're sitting in that 9.5 number, I would love for us to think about how we can stay there so that we're not trying to figure out this problem in a few years where it has grown as our region grows and we're trying to bring it down even further. So I'm hoping we can find a way as a group to figure out how to maintain that as much as possible as we try to attain the goal.
Agree, council member. And a couple of weeks before the new standard came out, I had lunch with Bob Day, who is the Williamson County, he's not transportation, he's infrastructure.
Director of Infrastructure.
Thank you. So we had lunch, and the thing he wanted to talk about the most was what strategies could we implement as a region. He was really worried about PM 2.5. So what strategies could we work on as a region to start to get that number down and keep it down?
So I'm going to suggest we save that for an agenda item that we'll do in April or May as soon as we can line up with TCEQ to get them here. Thank you. So item number 11, announcements. We've got a TAC meeting on the 26th. As a reminder, this policy board meeting is canceled March 11th, and we are meeting in April at a different date because Commissioner Howard was quick to point out when we were working on the calendar that conflicted with the eclipse. And so transportation might be interesting on that day, so the meeting was bumped back to the April date. So I think I saw staff walk out. Maybe they're taking the lids off. Okay, because they didn't want to make noise. So over here, there's going to be some snacks and stuff, so please hang around for a few minutes. Thank you all for being here. Happy Valentine's Day on Wednesday, and our meeting is adjourned.
And remember, the Longhorns will have won the national championship in basketball by that time, so let's just be ready for it.
Yeah, that's so not going to happen. Sorry,